Another type of price control are price floors. And so that, if you recall, is a legal minimum on what the price of good or service has to be. And a classic example of this is the minimum wage. So let's write down the labor market. So here is our market. Here are our axes. On the vertical axis, we're going to have the wage, which is denoted W. It's measured in dollars per hour. On the horizontal axis, we're going to have L, which is the quantity of labor. And now let's assume that this is actually unskilled labor. All right. And let's write down a supply and demand curve for labor. So here's our supply curve. It takes the normal form, upward sloping. Here's our demand for labor. And we know where the market will want to go to, this point here. And suppose that at that equilibrium point, the market is hiring 400 hours of labor at a price of $8 per hour. So this is our equilibrium without price controls. Now, a price floor below the equilibrium price is said to be not binding or non-binding, in that it doesn't have any effect. So suppose we have this market where the prevailing market wage is $8, and the government comes along and says, we're going to set a minimum wage to be $6. So this is our minimum wage. So in this case, the government says you can't pay below $6, but the market is actually offering $8. So the equilibrium is $8, and so the $6 minimum has no effect. The price floor has no effect. Now let's take the case where we have a binding price floor. So now let's think about a price floor or a minimum wage of $10. So if the government sets a minimum wage to $10, which I'm going to draw on the red line here. So this is our $10 minimum wage. Now in this case, the price floor is binding. With a price floor, of $8 per hour, of $10 per hour, the $8 per hour wage is illegal. Firms can't pay that amount. Here, the price floor, or the minimum wage, is binding. And the result is as follows. So, this means that the price is forced to be $10. And when the price is forced above equilibrium, there are two effects that occur. There's a demand effect and a supply effect. So the demand effect says that as the price goes up, all else being the same, people want to demand less. So the demanders of labor are the firms who hire labor, and now the firms are demanding fewer workers. So now at a price of $10 per hour, they're going to demand 200 hours of work. So that's the demand effect. So the result is the quantity of labor demanded falls. This is the law of demand. But also, as the wage rises, more workers want to earn the higher wage. So the quantity supplied rises. So this is the law of supply. As the price of a good rises, all else being the same, suppliers want to supply more. And the result here, now we have quantity supplied no longer equaling quantity demanded. We're not in equilibrium. And in this case, there is a surplus. There's a labor surplus. And the number of hours that we have in surplus are 400. There are 400 hours that workers would like to work at that price, but can't because there's not jobs available. And another term for a labor surplus is unemployment. And for most labor markets, the minimum wage is not binding. For the market for doctors or lawyers or plumbers, the minimum wage is well below the equilibrium price. So the minimum wage really only affects low skill markets, and so it's only a small section of the population. In the next set of notes, what we're going to do is do a few examples to show the difference between price ceiling, price floor, binding, non-binding.